This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next hour, European Union leaders meet in Brussels to debate on humanitarian pauses in Israel's war with Hamas to get aid into Gaza. UN General Assembly convenes 10th emergency special session on the situation in the Middle East. Israeli and Palestinian leaders trade charges at United Nations General Assembly meet. United Kingdom to set up the world's first artificial intelligence safety institute as London gears up to host a global artificial intelligence summit next week. And India's External Affairs Ministry expresses deep shock after 8 Indians get death penalty in Qatar, says government exploring all legal options. And Indian Prime Minister inaugurates 37th National Games in Goa, says event celebrates India's exceptional sporting prowess. The Israel-Gaza war rages on as death toll in Gaza continues to mount. Upping the ante, Benjamin Netanyahu has already announced the potentially decisive ground invasion into Gaza, claiming that thousands of terrorists of Hamas have been neutralized. Meanwhile, Brussels is hosting 27-member EU bloc on Thursday to discuss Middle East crises, to push for a pause in fighting, quote-unquote, to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. However, there are reports indicating that not all of the EU 27 members are on the same page. Here's a report.
As the Israel-Gaza conflict reaches its 20th day, Israel prepares for a potentially decisive ground invasion into Gaza. The Israeli government convened a war cabinet meeting in Tel Aviv. Before the meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a televised address, expressed Israel's intention to enter Gaza.
We are raining hellfire on Hamas. We have already killed thousands of terrorists, and this is only the beginning. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many.
Overnight, the IDF conducted a targeted raid using tanks in the northern Gaza Strip as part of preparations for the next stages of combat. During the activity, soldiers located and struck numerous terrorists, terror infrastructure and anti-tank missile launch posts, and operated to prepare the battlefield.
This war will be long, and in order to meet the goals of this war, we need resilience. We need faith. We need patience.
In the international arena, US President Joe Biden, who has been a supporter of Israel throughout the conflict, reiterated Israel's right to defend its citizens.
Israel has the right, and I would add a responsibility, to respond to the slaughter of their people. And we will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That's a guarantee.
Amid the ongoing conflict, Israeli rabbis and representatives of individuals believed to be kidnapped and held by Hamas fighters gathered in Jerusalem. They came together in a global day of prayer and unity event held on a rooftop in the Old City, praying for the release of the hostages. On Wednesday, an Israeli airstrike hit a multi-floor residential building in Gaza City. Israel started its aerial blitz against Gaza after Hamas militants stormed southern Israeli towns in a shock infiltration.
The battlefield has opened to a limited extent with Lebanon because of the intermittent exchanges between Hezbollah and the Israeli army in the north, and this is beyond the Palestinian territories. Now the threat looming large apart from the evolving humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip is that the conflict could spill over into the wider area with other state and non-state actors joining in. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Jerusalem.
And my colleague Amritpal, who continues to report from Jerusalem, joins us live. Taking a cue from your report, Amrit, that the spillover of this so-called war into other state and non-state actors. Just to elaborate that, and plus when you have Netanyahu himself in a televised speech almost declaring a war or a ground invasion of Gaza, this is what they call, Amrit. So is it just a matter of time now for a full-fledged war?
Okay, the first question, what do I mean by regional spillover, or what does the regional spillover include? The threat of which looms large and which has got the world leaders concerned, and that's why you see so much of diplomacy from Joe Biden to the German Chancellor to Rishi Sunak to the others who came, and Netherlands Prime Minister, Australian Chancellor, etc. The spillover means Hezbollah fires, Lebanon gets involved. Lebanon is a divided house there. Syria could come in. You've seen Aleppo and Damascus being bombed by the Israeli Air Force. Yesterday, military bases of Syrian army attacked. Basically, Iran-based backed countries. That's what I mean by state actors. And non-state actors means organizations like the Houthis, the Hezbollah, the Syrian groups, perhaps the Islamic State.
Okay.
And now coming to your second question, Sakal, it's a question of not but when. Yes, it's a question of when. If we look closely at Benjamin Netanyahu's speech yesterday, he said we'll go in, but he said I'll not tell you when and how. So the question is when, and how would depend upon, would it be something which they attempted last night, a localized raid, would they go in for close combat? The contours of all that will emerge once clarity happens as how much damage through aerial bombing they've been able to make Hamas, and only then I think the ground forces will go in.
Okay, now a bit more on this humongous humanitarian crisis that the world is watching. UN has said that the Gaza is running out of fuel. There are reports certain hospitals have stopped their services completely. What more can you fill us with the information that is trickling in from where you're reporting on the humanitarian crises and with the so-called intervention of UN?
Hospitals, Sakal, have been closed. Yeah, that's what I said. 12 out of 35 hospitals in the Gaza Strip have been closed. 290 educational institutions have been, bombed out, destroyed, etc. The situation is really bad there. Public infrastructure, as the UN says, if we don't get fuel, we'll not be able to operate. So the humanitarian crisis there is really grave, apart from the people who are dying from shelling, etc. And as far as, what was the last part of your question, Sakal?
Elaborate on the humanitarian crisis also, and especially the kind of noises that the UN is making. It seems that all that is falling onto deaf ears.
The UN is appealing both sides to calm down, to see the plight of the Palestinian people who are stuck in Gaza, basically the civilians. So that is UN stand. Israel is not, amenable to that. It attacked the UN chief, called for his resignation after he made a speech in the UNSC. So Israel really doesn't care what the UN says or does. The humanitarian crisis, I was saying, there is hardly fuel running out, no fuel trucks going in, aid going in, but very, very little. 20 is what they agreed on. Some days it's been less than 8. The UN says 200 per day is the requirement. So without say desalination plants running on fuel, they wouldn't have drinking water. They are at the end of the verge of collapse, clearly. So it's that bad, Sakal.
Yes, yes. Amrit, as of now, many thanks for joining us live from Jerusalem. You and your camera team, please do take good care of yourself. Thank you very much. And Thursday is the day 20 of the Israel-Hamas war, almost now inching closer to a month, where we've seen more than 7,900 people already killed in the conflict that began on 7th of October, all leading to this huge, huge humanitarian crisis.
These pictures take Yon and Miles, a father of twins, down the memory lane.
These are some of them. The children.
He describes Kibbutz as a place full of life and happiness.
The grown-up.
But things changed after October 7.
This is the house of my family. I've been here like a month ago with my twins. We came to celebrate this family reunion. We were sitting here doing some games and we were all celebrating. It was Saturday morning.
These blindfolded teddy bears on the streets of Tel Aviv symbolically represent missing children kidnapped by Hamas. It has been 3 weeks since these Israeli families have been anxiously waiting for their loved ones. Hamas has taken more than 200 people hostage after the attack. Pain and grief resemble also on the other side of the border. Buildings have fallen like house of cards, leaving thousands homeless. It's screaming and moaning everywhere in Gaza. There's no electricity, lack of drinking water. Hospitals are running out of fuel. This school in Gaza has turned into a shelter home for Palestinian refugees. But these children are hoping for a better tomorrow. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
Extremely disturbing visuals out there. Meanwhile, the UN agency providing aid to Palestinian civilians in besieged Gaza has warned that it may have to shut down operations shortly if no fuel reaches the enclave amid an increasingly desperate need for shelter, for water, for food and for medical services. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees has said that it urgently needs fuel to maintain life-saving humanitarian operations in the Islamist Hamas-ruled enclave that has been under Israeli bombardment for almost 3 weeks. Israel has refused to let in fuel with aid shipments, saying it could be seized by Hamas. More than 613,000 people have are gone homeless by the war between Israel and Hamas. They are sheltering in 150 UN RWA facilities across the shattered territories, one of the world's most densely populated places. The enclave is reeling from unrelenting Israeli airstrikes triggered by a deadly cross-border rampage into southern Israeli communities by Hamas militants on 7th of October. And the foreign ministers of the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, Egypt and Morocco have condemned targeting of civilians and violations of international law in Gaza, which has been under Israeli bombardment. The joint statement on Thursday mentioned that the right to self-defense does not justify breaking law and neglecting Palestinian rights. Moreover, they condemned what they described as the forced displacement and collective punishment in the Gaza Strip. Well, still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, UN General Assembly debates situation in Middle East. In other news, an emergency alert sounded in US state of Mian after a gunman kills 22 people.
अब क्या देख रहे हो पापा?
तुम कहते हो ना कि स्टॉक मार्केट में बहुत सोच समझकर इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, बस थोड़ा सा ज्ञान ले रहा हूँ।
किससे?
हर एक स्टॉक्स एक्सपर्ट है, मस्त एजुकेशनल वीडियोस बनाता है और अच्छी इन्वेस्टमेंट की टिप्स भी देता है।
पापा इन वीडियोस पे ना जाएं, अपना रिसर्च खुद करें या सेबी रजिस्टर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइजर से संपर्क करें। एजुकेशन के नाम पर कुछ इन्फ्लुएंसर्स अक्सर इन्वेस्टर को मिसगाइड करते हैं, नुकसान आपका होगा।
सोच कर, समझ कर, इन्वेस्ट कर।
तुम्हें पता है इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए एक इन्वेस्टर प्रोटेक्शन फंड होता है IPF, लेकिन अगर तुम्हारा ट्रेड एक्सचेंज पर एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हुआ या फिर कोई गारंटीड रिटर्न्स वाली स्कीम है तो ये IPF आपकी मदद नहीं कर सकता है।
और अगर आपका ब्रोकर ही डिफॉल्टर बन जाए तो
फिर IPF आपको कॉम्पेंसेशन दिला सकता है।
कहाँ से सीखा?
NSE की साइट पर।
सोच कर, समझ कर, इन्वेस्ट कर।
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching DD India's News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. And staying with Israel-Hamas conflict, Gilad Erdan, who is the ambassador and permanent representative of Israel to United Nations, has said that the 7th October massacre and what ensued, and I quote, has nothing to do with the Palestinians, unquote, the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Palestinian question, he added. In fact, Erdan spoke of the brutal killings of innocent Israeli civilians and children and intentional targeting of Israel medical teams that were trying to help the injured during the terror attack. He questioned the hypocrisy that there is not a single condemnation of the barbarity against Israelis.
This is not a war with the Palestinians. Israel is at war with the genocidal jihadist Hamas terror organization. Only. It is the law-abiding democracy of Israel against modern-day Nazis. Hamas do not care about the Palestinian people. They do not care about peace or dialogue. Hamas has only one goal: to annihilate Israel and murder every single Jew on the face of the earth.
Meanwhile, Riyad Mansour, who is also the permanent observer of the state of Palestine at the UNGA, recalled Israel's recent comments in the UN Security Council about how its people are suffering. He said Palestinians are suffering too.
Why some feel so much pain for Israelis and so little pain for us, the Palestinians? How can representatives of states explain how horrible it is that 1,000 Israelis were killed and not feel the same outrage when 1,000 Palestinians are now killed every day? Why not feel a sense of urgency to end their killing? Nothing can justify war crimes, crime against humanity, and genocide. This selective outrage is outrageous and needs to stop, and need to stop now.
Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has rejected 2 resolutions on the Israel-Hamas war already. The US and Russia have each put forward a draft calling for the Council to address shortages of food, water and other necessities in Gaza. But Russia's resolution demanded a humanitarian ceasefire, something the United States has not supported at all. Sally Patterson of DD India reports from New York City.
Negotiations were going on right up to the last minute, with the scheduled Security Council meeting pushed back to allow talks to continue. Russia had already said it would not support the US draft resolution, given the absence of language calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. The US argues any ceasefire will give Hamas the ability to rest and get ready to continue launching attacks against Israel. Instead, it called for humanitarian pauses to allow aid to get into Gaza. Now, Russia then put forward its own alternative text for representatives to vote on. Speaking before the vote, the US said their resolution was strong and balanced, and they had listened to all members. They said Russia had put forward their resolution in bad faith. But Russia said its draft wasn't political and accused the US of playing politics. Meanwhile, China accused the US of ignoring member states and having double standards, calling the draft out of balance. Both China and Russia vetoed the resolution. Russia's draft also didn't get enough votes to pass. This was the second time in 10 days the Council considered drafts on the crisis in the Middle East. It so far failed to adopt any resolutions on the recent escalations in Israel and Gaza. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
And my colleague Sally Patterson joins us live from New York. Sally, we saw your report. Well, it's very clear that the logjam at the UNSC continues. But as we speak, I believe the emergency UN meeting on Israel-Gaza is underway. We've heard both sides, Palestinian and Israelis representatives, talking about their side of the story, the barbarity that each one has, reportedly inflicted on each other. What latest can you share? What more information can you share with our viewers of DD India?
Well, certainly a war of words going on in the United Nations General Assembly. That meeting started almost 2 hours ago and could go on for many more. It's scheduled to finish in around an hour, and then it's scheduled to restart again on Friday. We've had at least 110 different speakers put their names forward to get up onto that podium and also have their say in a debate that really rages on throughout the whole organization. As you said, we did hear from Riyad Mansour, who is the permanent observer to the state of Palestine, and he used some very strong words when addressing his fellow representatives. He said, while we're having this debate, Palestinians are in Gaza, families are being killed. He says hospitals are coming to a halt, neighborhoods are being destroyed, people are fleeing from one place to another with nowhere to go. He said, I urge you to choose your words carefully and to act accordingly. Now, he claims that 3,000 children have been killed in Gaza in the past 3 weeks, and he claims that 70% of the overall people who've been killed have been women and children. He actually got quite emotional during that address, and you could hear the pain in his voice. We then heard from the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, and before that meeting, he had put out a very strong statement about his stance on this resolution put forward by Jordan. He said it completely ignores the existence of Hamas, does not mention the barbaric massacre, and calls for an immediate ceasefire. Now, that is one of Israel's strongest issues with this proposal. It calls for a ceasefire, which both Israel and the US are not supporting at this time. They say that that would just give Hamas time to recuperate and to get ready to continue to attack Israeli civilians. He also is taking issue with the idea that this proposal does not reflect what happened on October 7th in Israel, where more than 250 people were killed at a music festival. Many were raped, and the fighting continued on there as well. So very, very strong debates going on inside that General Assembly chamber.
Yes. In fact, Israel permanent representative at the UN, he began by saying that war is not against Palestinian. Their war is not against Palestinian, but it is actually against Hamas. And then, of course, the way he showed those very, very disturbing visuals at the UNGA. But Sally, where is this all leading up to? Talking about the proposal, if at all the proposal is passed at the UNGA, going forward, what really happens next?
Well, we need to remember that the United Nations General Assembly doesn't have the teeth to pass any binding resolutions. What they can do is show a strong symbolic message to their own nations and to nations around the world that this is where they stand on the ongoing violence in Israel and Gaza. It's the Security Council, which we heard from on Wednesday, who really has that more binding authority, but we haven't seen anything passed from them as of yet. We've seen several meetings take place, many speakers put forward, many resolutions put forward as well. But the divisions within that Security Council chamber are so strong that we haven't managed to see anything being passed. We've seen demands for the United Nations to take stronger action, both from within the organization and leaders around the world, but that just hasn't been possible because of rivalries within that chamber. The United Nations is, of course, continuing with its humanitarian aid as we speak, trying to get food, medical resources, fuel into Gaza, where people are running out.
Yes, undoubtedly. Sally, thank you so much. Sally Patterson joining us live from New York. Thank you for filling in with that information. And let's now move on to the other big stories that we're tracking for you on NewsHour tonight. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has called for global responsibility to take artificial intelligence risks seriously and seize its opportunities. UK government has prepared to host world first global safety summit. Our next report gets you more.
While speaking on artificial intelligence safety in London on Thursday, Prime Minister of United Kingdom Rishi Sunak said there is a risk that humanity could lose control of a super intelligence AI completely, and only governments could properly assess the risk to national security.
Only governments can properly assess the risk to national security, and only nation states have the power and legitimacy to keep their people safe.
Highlighting the positives of the technology, the Prime Minister pledged a further £100 million of investment to accelerate the use of AI. He announced to set up world's first artificial intelligence safety institute.
I can announce that we will establish the world's first AI Safety Institute right here in the UK. It will advance the world's knowledge of AI safety, and it will carefully examine, evaluate, and test new types of AI so that we understand what each new model is capable of, exploring all the risks, from social harms like bias and misinformation through to the most extreme risks of all.
The UK Prime Minister said that he believes that technology like artificial intelligence will bring a transformation as far-reaching as the Industrial Revolution. UK government is all set to host the Global Summit on AI Safety next week from November 1st. AI has the potential to enhance terrorist capabilities, including in propaganda, bioweapons development and attack planning. The analysis published by the Government Office for Science also says that by 2025, AI is expected to increase the frequency and sophistication of cyber attacks, scams, fraud and other crimes.
This new UK government report focuses on both the risks presented by artificial intelligence as well as the benefits it can provide. The paper addresses a few key topics, including the safety and security risks of generative AI, the capabilities of this technology, and the risks that could emerge in the future. William Denslow in London, reporting for DD India.
A massive manhunt was underway on Thursday for a gunman who a local official says has... Okay, now let's move on to some other story. We will get you the story on the manhunt in Mian, in the US state of Mian, a little later on our show. But you have some more news coming in on the US lawmaker Mike Johnson, who is the new Speaker of the lower house of the country's legislature. Johnson's election comes after 3 weeks of turmoil and 3 failed candidates. Here's a profile of Mike Johnson, who is serving a 4th term as a lawmaker from the Republican Party.
In a surprising turn of events, Congressman Mike Johnson has emerged as the 56th Speaker of the House of Representatives, overcoming a turbulent 3 weeks in the Republican Party. Amid cheers, standing ovations and warm smiles from his Republican colleagues, Johnson's ascent to the top position in Congress concealed the internal strife that had gripped the party.
In this time of great crisis, it is our duty to work together, as previous generations of great leaders have, to face these great challenges and solve these great problems. The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here.
Mike Johnson's success can be attributed in part to what he wasn't. He stood apart from the existing Republican House leadership, a trio consisting of Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, and Tom Emmer, all of whom had faced rejection by hardline conservatives during the recent tumultuous weeks. Born in Shreveport, Louisiana, Mike Johnson is the oldest of 4 siblings and the son of a firefighter who had sacrificed limb in the line of duty and was left disabled due to injuries. The 51-year-old Johnson, before entering the world of Congress, was a lawyer. His political journey began in 2015 when he was elected to the Louisiana State House, followed by a successful run for Congress in 2016, representing Louisiana's 4th congressional district, which includes his hometown of Shreveport. Congressman Johnson is a staunch conservative, gaining recognition for his unwavering support of former President Donald Trump's efforts to challenge the results of the 2020 election. Johnson's conservative stances extended to social issues. He's also a strong advocate against abortion rights.
Johnson's to-do list is particularly long. He has to deal with White House demands for more than $106 billion of funding for Ukraine and Israel in their conflicts. And then there's the looming government shutdown. The 17th of November is the date by which new legislation needs to be passed to prevent a shutdown. All of those things will be very difficult for a congressman with little experience, having served in the House for only 6 years. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
The Ministry of External Affairs has reacted to the decision of Qatar court giving death penalty to 8 former Indian Navy personnel. The ministry said, and I quote, "We are deeply shocked by the verdict of death penalty and are awaiting the detailed judgment. We are also in touch with the family members and the legal team, and we are exploring all legal options. We attach high importance to this case and have been following it closely. We will continue to extend our consular and legal assistance. We will also take up the verdict with Qatari authorities." Unquote. This is the MEA's statement on the Qatar courts given death penalty to 8 former Indian Navy personnel. Now moving on, India's Kashmir Valley has witnessed a massive transformation after 35 years. A procession was taken out from Shiv Temple in Indiranagar on the Shera in the Kashmir Valley. And here around 500 people from different communities participated in the procession. Rajiv Rai Bhatnagar, advisor to the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Manoj Sinha, also graced the occasion. Under the Back to Village program, Jammu and Kashmir administration also conducted Janta Darbar in 20 districts to reach out to solve the people's grievances. People of the Union Territory appreciated the step of this government.
कश्मीर के अंदर एक डेवलपमेंट चेंज यहाँ पे देखने को मिले तो हम केवल यहाँ के जो सेंटर की सरकार श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की सरकार है हम उनसे शुक्रगुजार है कि जिस तरीके से उन्होंने सरकार चलाई है पूरे कश्मीर के अंदर तो हम बिल्कुल खुश हैं.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, EU leaders gather in Brussels to discuss the possibility of a humanitarian pause. Russia conducts a massive nuclear strike drill hours after their parliament revokes the country's ratification of a global ban on nuclear testing.
Women luminaries are going to share their experiences, their stories.
How to become a scientist, how to do what to do for the future. They are thinking about all those things.
Sky is not the limit, that is what we have proven now. Now we have to go beyond the sky.
Develop our curiosity. Try to learn the science from the nature.
With the Gaganyaan mission and the upcoming future missions to Mars landing and other things, your people's interaction is really required.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, let's also do a quick recap of the headlines. European leaders meet in Brussels to debate on humanitarian pauses in Israel's war with Hamas to get aid into Gaza. UN General Assembly convenes 10th emergency special session on the situation in Middle East. Israeli and Palestinian leaders trade charges at UNGA. India's External Affairs Ministry expresses deep shock after 8 Indians get death penalty in Qatar, says government exploring all legal options. Also, Russia's military has conducted a massive retaliatory nuclear strike drill hours after the upper house of the parliament voted to revoke the country's ratification of the global ban on nuclear testing. The exercise was overseen by President Vladimir Putin himself. India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar has addressed Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which took place in Bishkek, the capital of Kyrgyz Republic. Minister Jaishankar said in his address that India shares deep civilizational ties with the people of the Central Asian region. He also added that the SCO should work together to promote stability and prosperity in the region. The SCO should strictly adhere to the principles of international law. He added that India is among the top 10 exporters in the world and that India hosts an SCO Starter Forum as well. Minister Jaishankar, in his address to the SCO meeting in Kyrgyz capital Bishkek, Aksi, called for working together for stability around the world. Take a listen.
Rising tensions and increasing number of hotspots around the world. This has sharply spiked volatility and placed significant strain on global economic growth. Therefore, we at SCO should work together to promote stability and prosperity in the region by strictly adhering to principles of international law, respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity, and encouraging economic cooperation.
European Union leaders were poised to call for humanitarian corridors in Gaza, for pauses in bombardments into and out of the enclave to enable access for aid after days of wrangling that highlighted divisions within the bloc over the Israel-Hamas conflict. While EU leaders have strongly condemned Hamas' attack on Israel, they have struggled to stick to the same message beyond that, with some stressing that Israel's right to self-defense and others emphasizing concerns about Palestinian civilians. As leaders gather for a summit in Brussels on Thursday, diplomats and officials have spent days debating whether to call for a humanitarian pause or pauses in a text intended as a final draft for the summit declaration included the latter, expressing leaders' gravest concern for the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza. It calls for continued rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access and aid to reach those in need through all necessary measures, including humanitarian corridors as well as pauses. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has expressed support for humanitarian access.
The European Union needs to react and act united and resolute. The Commission is acting decisively. We are providing Ukraine in a steadfast manner with the support it needs to resist the aggression of Russia. We are providing crucial humanitarian aid to the civilian people. In Gaza, we're working very hard with the member states to manage migration. All this needs funding, and this is the reason why I've proposed a revision of the EU budget to be able to fund these very important tasks.
Well, in other news, India's instant payment system has garnered praises from US Treasury, also hailing India's UPI for cross-border payment leadership. Highlighting India's distinct progress in this space, Shambog pointed out how India has effectively advanced bilateral links between its unified payments and interface system and those of other nations as well. Here's a report.
India's UPI has revolutionized how Indians make payment in their daily life. UPI, a simple QR-based payment system developed by the National Payments Corporation of India, has become an essential part of the Indian payment system, not only in the urban cities, but also in the rural hinterlands. This digital payment method is widely accepted across the country. It has now won praises from US Treasury official J. Shambog, who said that the UPI stands out in advancing bilateral links with other countries, including Singapore and the UAE. Referring to India, Shambog said that some jurisdictions with strong bilateral economic relationships are going further and interlinking their fast payment systems. He added that UPI also enables settlement of payments across networks. Shambog also hailed the G20 payments roadmap, saying that it has channeled efforts for near-term growth. UPI transactions over the last 5 years have risen by more than 40 times, from as little as 246 million monthly transactions in 2018. It has risen to 9,335 million in 2023.
So in the last few years, we made huge progress in digital payments. So the number of transactions in digital payments are increasing year on year. It is about contactless payment. So we are used to using a card, a tap and go type of thing. So instead of a card, there are new devices which are coming up, like a keychain or a ring or even a watch, through which you can just tap on a pause and make your payment.
From small tea sellers by the roadside to vegetable vendors and to multi-brand retail outlets, UPI has become an essential element of the digital payment infrastructure.
This is very beneficial. People who don't have change directly send money on Paytm and it straight away goes into our bank account.
Introduction of UPI has reduced the hassle of returning the change, which then turns into a big deal later. It also reduced cash dependency and saved us from snatchers.
During the G20 summit, a German minister shopped using UPI wallet and was all gaga about UPI. In fact, all G20 delegates praised India for the UPI. Other countries are also adopting India's UPI system like Singapore, Bhutan. It also goes to prove in the coming days UPI will go from strength to strength in achieving India's resilient digital public infrastructure that is becoming a game changer. Shagnik Chakraborty reporting for DD India.
And we're very honored, in fact, to have with us Mr. MP Tangriala. He's the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Department of Financial Services, Government of India. Thank you very much, Mr. Tangriala, for joining us. To begin with, how has this been a big game changer for not only India, but the kind of international recognition that India's UPI has garnered worldwide? Your opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. In fact, as your report rightly points out, we've reached almost 100 crore transactions a month. And that is truly, if you ask me, that is truly the key element of the digital stack that India has. And it has the potential to go to 100 billion, 1,000 crore transactions in the next 15 years or so. Now, cross-border real-time payments have also been enabled, for India, Singapore, and a MOU has been done with UAE. And once the pipes are established, the sky is the limit. And I must also mention that if you've seen today's report, the e-commerce and especially small to medium level transactions, the e-commerce is completely being taken over by UPI. And that is a big game changer as far as things go.
So overall, India has clearly taken a pole position or leadership position when it comes to cross-border payment globally?
Yeah. In fact, I do not know of any other initiative which has this kind of applicability across sectors, and India is leading cross-border. As I've said, Singapore, UAE, and we will be going aggressively across geographies.
Sir, if you could also share with us numerous other initiatives that are underway to modernize some legacy payment systems, which in a way enhance data richness and also promote very reliable payment processing.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, many innovations on the UPI rails, it's considered as the basic rail, and we're doing primary market investments, offline UPI, multiple languages AI-backed conversational payments for feature phones, and recurring payments. These are some of the initiatives that we are doing. And also now credit is launched on UPI so that small credit can be given to the over 35 crore active customers who are on UPI already.
Especially in the G20 space, we know how it really garnered so much of recognition with the G20 leadership that was here during G20 summit when India was hosting it. But this being a tangible part of the G20 roadmap, would you like to elaborate on that as well? How much of space has been covered so far?
Sure. In fact, for the G20, essentially there are also cross-border remittances and payments, which is a big part of the UPI story. And then there is the digital payment infrastructure, which we want to actually transmit our experience and our expertise in this developing this DPI. In a big way, and a lot of work has been done on both these initiatives.
We'll leave it there. We're very sorry we're really running short of time. It was such a pleasure talking to you and sharing such an important insight why UPI is such a game changer. Thank you very much, MP Tangriala, Additional Secretary, Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Thanks for joining, sir. And now still to come on DD India News Hour. And Sri Lanka registers a big win as England suffers fourth loss.
ISRO women luminaries are going to share their experiences, their stories.
How to become a scientist, how to do what to do for the future. They're thinking about all those things.
Sky is not the limit, that is what we have proven now. Now we have to go beyond the sky.
Develop our curiosity. Try to learn the science from the nature.
With the Gaganyaan mission and the upcoming future missions to Mars landing and other things, your people's interaction is really required.
Highly distinguished women scientists who played a stellar role in successful launch of mission Chandrayaan-3.
Hard work, resilience, and being perfect. The brighter young minds we have, the future is going to be better.
We should capitalize this moment and we should take the children forward. I think they are the future of our country.
There is much more needs to be explored and understood.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Staying on with the other big story on News Hour, and we go back to our story on the EU leaders, the 27-member bloc EU leaders meeting in Brussels. DD India's correspondent Julia Champman in Brussels is joining us live from Brussels, of course, to fill us with more. Julia, thank you. To begin with, fill us with more details on the EU bloc, which is aiming desperately to push for this pause in fighting to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza.
That's right. That has been at the top of the agenda as EU leaders meet here in Brussels for this European Council summit. There have been discrepancies in the positions between certain countries over how strongly to word the joint text that is expected to be signed at the end of this two-day summit. So what we are expecting is that there are some countries like Austria, like Germany, and like the Czech Republic, who have been more reluctant to express a call for any kind of ceasefire in Gaza. The Austrian Chancellor Nehammer behind me as we speak, one of the more reticent countries when it comes to agreeing this language between European Union member states. But there are others who want to go more strongly, who are saying that there should be a call for a ceasefire in the fighting. But we understand that the text is still being discussed as we speak. There is a likelihood that there will be a call for a humanitarian pauses, but not necessarily any kind of ceasefire. So the negotiations are still ongoing. They're likely to continue for some time. But as ever, there's a difficulty in getting these 27 leaders to agree on any kind of text.
Okay, so as far as the discrepancies and the fact that they're not on the same page, is this a difference of opinion only as far as the text is concerned? But in principle, they want, all of them rather want the war should end.
Well, there are many countries that want to make it very clear that they believe that Israel has a right to defend itself against Hamas, and that is something that they have been expressing over the last couple of weeks. So not necessarily a call to the end of the fighting, but there is certainly unity when it comes to the idea of getting aid into Gaza, big concerns about the humanitarian situation there, and that is expected to be expressed in the joint text at the end of this meeting. But there are also other items on the agenda as well. Aid for Ukraine, a top-up of the EU budget that would allocate quite a big chunk of money to Ukraine over the next few years. There isn't exactly unity on that either, but there is certainly more alignment than there is when it comes to the situation in the Middle East, migration, Serbia and Kosovo as well. Lots of items up for discussion, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been briefing his EU counterparts by a video link, trying to ensure that Ukraine remains on the agenda as distractions come in the form of the fighting between Israel and Hamas.
Okay, so clearly it's, as far as this 27-member bloc is concerned, very quickly, Julia, it is a divided house as we speak, and quite clearly there is a lack of consensus, at least on Hamas, Israel conflict.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's safe to say that there is a division of opinion when it comes to how far to go in expressing support for Israel and expressing calls for a need to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. We are seeing all leaders express concern about a loss of life, about the humanitarian situation, but very much to varying extents.
All right, we'll leave it there, Julia. Many thanks for joining us live from Brussels on that important story. Thank you. Well, let's get you some news on India completing 1 year of 5G services in the country on the 1st of this month. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has launched 5G services in the country at the 6th edition of the India Mobile Congress. Indian Prime Minister said that with 5G, India is setting a global standard in telecom technology for the first time. Let's also look at how far India has come in terms of 5G. Let's take a look. Now, since its launch on 1st of October 2022, within 8 months of launch, 200,000 sites covering 700 districts have been installed. India has also over 330,000 5G-based transceivers stations. 31 million Indian users could upgrade to 5G phones in 2023. Okay, those are the figures on your screen. India has also highest average monthly usage per smartphone of 226 GB per month. We're looking basically at the 5G user base in India. Sri Lankan subsidiary of Indian Oil Corporation, Lanka IOC, has been granted the renewal license. The government of Sri Lanka has allowed IOC's subsidiary to continue its retail operations in the island nation for another 20 years, and the renewed petroleum products license will be effective from January 22nd, 2024. It is notable that Lanka IOC played a key role in ensuring steady supply of fuel products during the peak of the economic crisis last year. And shifting focus to the National Games. The 37th National Games of India have officially begun today. That's on Thursday at Fatorda in Goa. Prime Minister Narendra Modi officially inaugurated the Games. Goa-born professional windsurfer Katya Ida Kolo handed over the torch to the Prime Minister. Over 10,000 Indian athletes will be competing across 42 disciplines, what makes this edition the biggest in the history. The theme of this edition of the National Games is One Nation, One Spirit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi this way back 6-7 years back in the skies of India, witnessing a spectacular ceremony with multiple acts. Modi ji.
मैं 37वें राष्ट्रीय खेलों की शुरुआत की घोषणा करता हूं। आप सभी एथलीट्स को फिर से अनेक शुभकामनाएं। गोवा है तैयार, गोवा असा तैयार, गोवा इज रेडी
Well, India created history at the ongoing Asian Para Games in Hangzhou in China by achieving their best ever medal haul on Thursday. The Indian medal tally swelled to 82 medals. The country's previous best was 72, which they had achieved in Indonesia in 2018. India has won 14 medals at the 2010 edition and 33 in 2014. India has also broken its record for winning the most gold medals in a single edition of the Asian Para Games. India has also bagged 18 goals in the ongoing edition. Switching focus to cricket, chasing target of 157 runs, Sri Lanka defeated the defending champions England by 8 wickets. With 146 balls remaining, this is Sri Lanka's 5th consecutive win over England in the World Cup matches, which means this has been the result of this particular fixture for the past 20 years. Sri Lanka lost 2 quick wickets of Kusal Pereira and Kusal Mendes, but Sadira Samaravicramama and Pathum Nisanka built a strong partnership and defeated England by 8 wickets. As far as England is concerned, the only successful bowler was David Willey, who scalped 2 wickets, but they lost the game. Well, that's it we have for you in this edition of DD India News Hour at 9. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and you can reach us through Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and from all of us here in Delhi team, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.
अब क्या देख रहे हो पापा? तुम कहते हो ना कि स्टॉक मार्केट में बहुत सोच समझकर इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए।